Hey, Warrior Saints. Glad to have you beautiful people with us as we continue our conversation from yesterday. I mean, sacrifice is everything, right? I know that sounds crazy to say, but so let's turn practical. I was running the other day and I do it to for health to stay alive. I'm not going to enter a marathon. I'm not going to win any races, none of that stuff. My times are not good. I'm old enough that I'm just doing it and I'm out there sweating. And I have measured all the miles. So from my house out the front door to mile 1 to mile 2, 3, 4, 5, all that kind of stuff. And I have different routes for different lengths, how much time I've got and how good I feel, all that. So I'm out there and I get to the first mile and I'm like, usually, so I'll just confess it. Sorry, everyone. When I get to mile 1, I stop, take a quick little walk. Just a breather for my old body to keep going. And then I start running again. And mile 2, I take a little walk and so on. So I get to mile 1 and I'm like, ooh, there's a tree up there ahead. Get to that tree. Then you can slow down. And then I got to the tree and I felt still okay. And I was like, ooh, there's another one, half a mile ahead. Get to that tree. And, by the time I got all the way, I actually, forgive it, bragging, but I got to this, for me, the second mile without having to take that 10, 20-second walk, right? But what got me through it was thinking in my mind that, just sacrifice a little bit more. It's everything, right? Putting my desire for comfort and rest and ease, even if it was a 20-second walk, put it aside, sacrifice it. Now, what's funny about that, I did it, and I was thinking to myself, this is what it means to be crucifixion. I mean, think about Jesus himself, Deacon Greg, right? He literally sacrificed everything. I mean, his life, right? Voluntarily. And yet, in doing so, he conquers death, leads us, to the empty tomb, and offers all of us the possibility of salvation. So, with that kind of as the model, in a practical sense, that sacrifice of running, and I'll turn it to you here, became kind of a mantra for me. And now every time I run, I try to go one step further. And boy, let me tell you, now getting to that tree after mile 1 is way easier than it was, weeks ago when I started this whole thing. So in other words, it produced the sacrifice of, and the really little suffering that I went through to run those extra half mile produced fruit. Now I can get there with no problems. That makes sense. I know that's a long spiel, but I think that can apply to all facets of life.
Yeah. I mean, in everything that we're doing, we are called to that sacrifice, but it's segmented into little chunks.
Yeah.
Right? Like the big goals, you have to be able to break down the larger goal that you're getting to of, I want to run X amount of miles, by having those little segments, those little chunks along the way that break it up so that it becomes attainable, it becomes measurable, it becomes small wins that lead you to the larger wins, that lead you to the larger goals. And it's not a trick that we play on our mind. It's the way that we break it down so that we can be ultimately successful in what we want to do.
Right.
Like my wife and I recently cleaned out our garage. It is something that we have not done in 7 years of marriage. We've been in the house for 6 years. So in 6 years, we have not touched it. We've just added to it.
Yeah.
And every so often we move everything around and think we're reorganizing, but really we're just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic as it's on its way down. Yesterday, we actually did it, and we actually gutted it, and we actually reorganized things. And I walked in there leaving the house today, and I was like,
yeah,
because it felt like I could breathe. It didn't feel like all of the junk was there. Now, that then becomes a metaphor for how we're supposed to live our lives according to getting to all of these larger goals. And the way that we do it is by breaking it all down. So like to do the garage, we first started in this section. And then we put the big stuff back the way that we wanted to and rearrange the big things and old mattresses that we keep in case we need to put someone on the floor. Not that we regularly put people on the floor, but if a guest comes.
Yeah.
And then if we need to then go from there, we go to the shelving units and we take all the little stuff off and we start rearranging that and then figure out categorizing and then go from there. Then we attack the next corner and then we attack the next corner. That's the those steps that we took are the same steps that we then can take in every other aspect of our lives to break things down. Do you have a huge project that you're working on? You then take that big project and you break it down into little steps, the same way that you've got every mile of your run measured out,
Right.
so that you can break it down. And then when you make those little wins, it propels you to keep going, because you've got it and you want to keep going. You want to keep going. You want to keep your momentum rolling. But if you're just looking at something as a large thing, like, you're just going to keep saying, I want to write this book someday. But if you break it down and you write it chapter by chapter, then
Yeah.
you've actually broken it down. Actually, this is really helpful, because I've got friends that or people that I work with on their projects for their doctoral work. This becomes the way that works, because if you just look at the daunting project, it's daunting and you're always going to procrastinate.
Right.
If you actually break it down the way that, and you get those things and you get those small little wins, then you get the momentum and it keeps us going. But you will only get those small wins with sacrifice.
Yes. That's
Why
true.
are you laughing?
No, I
at
think
me?
the whole, I mean, there's not much to add to that. I mean, I love it. Myself too, I try to break things down. You were talking about writing a book. I wrote a book. It's there. I don't know if you can see it.
Here, we'll go to that angle. Now you can see it.
I wrote that book, but I don't like writing and I'm not good at it, but I broke it down. The only way I was able to get through it was to say, all right, dude, I didn't even break it down to chapters. Within each of the chapters of my book, there are like 4 or 5 different sections. I'm like, just write one little section, Now,
Yeah.
sometimes in that, I'd get in the rhythm and I would finish the whole chapter or draft, So that was good. But breaking it down, because it makes it more, sometimes you've got to have big, huge, monstrous goals. But sometimes looking at them is fearful because they're huge and monstrous, right? How am I going to do it? And we get sucked into stuck in the freeze mode, right? Like, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to stay there. Breaking it down is great, but it does require. Anyways, I'm rambling. It does require the sacrifice at that point in whatever it is in life.
Yeah.
Everything sacrifices everything. It really is. It's Christ's way. The way of the cross. Right. Anyhow, good stuff.
I think it's fabulous.
I enjoyed this combo. Thanks for doing it. I hope it was it's fun for them as well as for us. Anyways, all right. We'll be back as we always are on Sunday with Orthros and Liturgy at 9 and 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Please remember this was filmed before it went live, so what we talked about may have changed on the ground, literally, maybe even during the filming. But just understand that the conflict in Israel and Iran was simply a metaphor for Deacon Greg and I to get into the conversation. All right, enough rambling. Check our stuff out at warriorsaints.org. Lots of fun stuff coming. We have totally upgraded, totally updated all of it. I mean, it's awesome. Our Understanding the Bible series, which we referenced earlier, particularly with the book of Revelation, is there. It's good stuff. You might want to check it out. I mean, if you're struggling with scripture, you want to read it and understand it, we're here to help you do that. Orthros and Liturgy, 9 and 10 a.m., as I said, respectively. Pacific time. We'll be back next week with more. Love you, beautiful people. Have a great week. Keep safe out there. Pray for all of those people who are suffering in the world. Keep us in your prayers that God may give us strength. And as always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.